That's pretty bad. Have you ever felt just like completely, like I totally just jacked that up? Yes. Yeah. Anybody got it like a real like that was bad. Like I mean it was real. You know what I'm saying? Like okay, like I've jacked some things up like beyond repair, like messed up. And I've been at fault. I've failed a bunch of times. And so I started looking at some stuff. I have my phone on me, by the way, and I started looking at some stuff of some famous failures. And I'm just going to kind of skim through here and read some, and then I'm going to tell you my favorite. But, you know, what is it about failure that tries to hold you down? You know what I'm talking about? Like once you fail at something, you develop this fear of not wanting to move forward or not try again. You know, I don't know. I remember when I was young, I can't remember what grade I was in. I wanted to try pole vaulting, and I didn't make it to the mat. And I landed on the ground, and that hurt. It hurt bad, and I thought, I don't want to try that again. I'm probably not a pole vaulter, so I'll move on to something else. And I never tried it again. I probably made a wise decision. I probably dodged a lot of embarrassment. So, you know, does anybody else relate to that? You know what I'm talking about? I'm trying to skim through these. I had some picked out, and then I totally just messed up. Jerry Seinfeld. Anybody know who Jerry Seinfeld is? He was fired after a poor performance on his very minor role on a sitcom, Benson. Has anybody ever heard of Benson? I've never heard of that. Jerry Seinfeld was fired at one time. And everybody knows who Jerry Seinfeld is, right? You better. All right. Howard Stern was fired by NBC. Elvis, this is one of my favorites. I love this one. This one. After a performance at Nashville's Grand Ole Opry, Elvis was told by the concert hall manager that he was better off returning to Memphis and driving trucks. Elvis. Let's see here. I'm sorry for all the dead air. I had these lined out and totally, I don't know what I did with them. Albert Einstein didn't speak until he was 4 and didn't read until he was 7. Y'all know who Albert Einstein is, right? Okay, good. Isaac Newton. He was a whiz at math, but he did not excel when it came to other subjects. He never thrived in school and was once put in charge of running the family farm and failed terribly. Obviously, running the farm wasn't his calling. My favorite one, I can't find it, is Walt Disney. Walt Disney was fired from his first job because he wasn't creative enough. He didn't have enough creativity. Has anybody ever been to Disney World? I like Walt Disney. Disney World blows my mind. I love going to Disney World. There's so much creativity. It's magical. Like I'm not talking about like magic, but it's like this place you walk into and like you step into another world. You know what I'm talking about? Like for the ones who've been there, like as an adult, it is extremely fascinating. It's just so cool, so cool. Like so, if you've never been, save up for a long time and then try to go. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. He once said, "I've missed over 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. On 26 occasions, I've been entrusted to take the game-winning shot, and I've missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." That's my favorite. I love that. I love the Disney World or Walt Disney one, and I love the Michael Jordan one because that's perfect. Because like it's okay to fail. But for some reason inside of us, there's something inside of us that tells us that it's not okay to fail. Like we get up here on the stage and we try to practice these songs and we get ticked off at each other and we get frustrated and we get mad and it gets heated because we can't play it right or I can't play it right or someone's not playing it right or something's not doing it right or it doesn't sound right or it doesn't go good or whatever. And there's a lot of times we want to give up. But what happens when you give up? What happens when you call it the end? Well, it's the end. And you miss what God may be calling you to. See, from my experience, I've learned a lot by failing. I've learned a lot at falling down or falling short. I've learned a lot about myself when it comes to failing. When I've failed at something, I've learned. You learn from it. You put your hand on a hot stove. You don't do it a second time. You don't keep doing it just for fun. I did that. I didn't believe it was hot. I'm just kidding. My friend at their house, they had a stove top, and it was the smooth one, it had been on but wasn't on, and so like it wasn't red, so you couldn't tell it was still hot. And we were in the kitchen talking, and I leaned back and put my hand back, and it got my hand good. And so now, like, when I'm around stoves, I don't put my hand on stoves. It doesn't matter if it's on or not, or even if it looks like it's off. I don't put my hand on it. I don't trust it. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be red for you to know to stop. Not do it. Don't stop at a green light, though. That's annoying. You ever be behind somebody at a red light and it turns green, and they're just sitting there hanging out? They're texting, something, falling asleep. Failure is a vital part of learning. It's also a vital part of God teaching us where He's taking us. So today we're going to talk about Peter. He's one of my favorite guys. He's one of my favorite disciples. I like a lot about Peter because he's kind of a loose cannon kind of guy. He kind of just says what's on his mind and does whatever. And I feel like I relate to that more than I relate to all the good guys. There's a lot of times my mouth gets me in trouble, and I say things, and I'm like, oh, whoops, well, probably shouldn't have said that. Next time maybe I'll think before I speak, but then I never do again. So today we're going to be in John 21, and we're gonna uncover some stuff. I read this week, and it was like a major revelation to me. Like, I got it this time like I've never got it before. Like, I understood something that was really cool, and so I'm going to share it with you today. And we're just going to kind of read this whole chapter almost and talk about some things that are going on because to me it's really important. This is later. I'm going to have to hold this up close where I can see all these lights. Excuse me. So later, John 21, are you there, verse 1? Excuse me. It says, later Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. I'll give you a little background of what's going on here. This is after the crucifixion, after the resurrection, and Jesus has started appearing to his disciples again. I circled the word again because I feel like that's very relevant because Jesus will show up time after time after time after time on you. So I thought that was cool. So later Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. This is how it happened. Several of the disciples were there. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples. Simon Peter said, at one point Jesus renamed Simon to Peter. Simon means shifty, and Peter means rock. And so Jesus decided that he needed to be renamed. And I think that's true for a lot of us. Jesus wants to rename some of us because we're shifty or we're doubtful, and he wants to rename you. Simon Peter said, I'm going fishing. Peter, at this point, had given up. Like, I don't know if you know a whole lot about Peter, but Peter was also the same guy that denied Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed. When Jesus was being led to the crucifixion, he told Peter ahead of time, he's like, I'll tell you, you'll deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. And Peter argued with him. Peter said, no way, no way. But then when things got real and Jesus was being led down, sure enough, Peter denied 3 times before the rooster crowed. And at this point, Peter said, I'm going fishing. I'm going back to where I came from. I'm going back to where I started. I'm going back to who I used to be. I'm no longer Peter. I'm going back to Simon. And we do that. We do that. We fail and we get hurt. We hurt ourselves. We turn back and we say, you know what? Forget all this hard work. I'm just going back to the old me. I'm going back to the old things. I'm going back to where I'm comfortable. I'm going back to where it was easy. Sorry, I could stay on that longer, but Peter said, I'm going fishing. And they said, we'll come too, they all said. And see, and a lot of times we're good at when we decide we're going to turn back, we take our friends with us. We're good at taking the ones around us down with us. Because we don't want to be the only ones that turn away. So we'll come too, they said. So they went out in the boat and they caught nothing all night. To me, that's no surprise. Okay? Never mind. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. He called out, fellows, have you caught any fish? I think he had a little bit of sarcasm going there. I could be wrong. I think Jesus was picking on them. I think he was having some fun with them. No, they replied. Then he said, throw out your net on the right side of the boat and you'll get some. So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish. Does this story sound familiar? This is after the crucifixion, okay? This is after the crucifixion. Does this story sound familiar at all? Have anybody ever heard a story similar to this? Okay, see, I'm going to take you back a little bit, and I read it in Luke. I think it even says Luke. Mine, it has a little note and it says Luke 5:4-7. So we're going to flip over there. And this is when Jesus first called the disciples. They were fishing and said, I guess it's in 5, verse 4. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, now go out where it's deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish. Master, Simon replied, we worked hard all last night and didn't catch anything. But if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. And at this time, their nets were so full of fish they began to tear. So, I mean, I feel like that had to hurt their pride at least a little bit. That had to sting just a little bit. Have you ever, someone tell you, okay, hey, give you some direction on how to do something, and you're thinking, what? I can do this. I can take this. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do this. And then they come back, and it's totally failed. It doesn't work. And they said, well, see, do this. And then you do it, and it works, and you're like, oh. You know what I mean? Because you want to be right. And it stings when you're not sometimes. It stings. I'm sorry, I don't mean to point you. I have a fellow friend here, this Dr. Pepper friend. His name is Brian also. And I remember, he's going to know what I'm talking about. So when I was working at Dr. Pepper, I was on the truck. there was a very specific way to do things. You had to downstack your product, and there was a way you had to kick under your product. And because if you didn't get how to work this dolly down, if you didn't get that down, you wouldn't make it, because that dolly was your best friend. And if you could kick under that product and roll that product right and balance it right and pop up on the curves right, if you couldn't get that part, you wouldn't make it. It would kill you. You would be hurting so bad the next day that you wouldn't go back to work. You would say, forget this, I ain't doing that. And I know he's trained guys, and when I first started, I had to train people, and I would tell them over and over, no, you got to do it this way, no, you got to do it this way, and they wouldn't do it. And I remember one guy, he just insisted on doing it his way, and he had this big stack, and all right, do it your way, go ahead. He just flat out refused, no, I'm not doing it that way. And he did it his way, and he dropped stuff all over the parking lot, all over the place. And he spent more time picking up a mess and cleaning up a mess than he did anything. And I don't think he made it very long. I can't remember, but I don't think he ever finished the training. He finally gave up and quit. And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, have similar experiences. But we do that too in life. We do that too. Things don't go our way. And we give up. And it's not that things don't go our way, it's that we weren't following the directions to begin with. Jesus had just laid out this perfect example of life. It was crucified, put on the cross, and the disciples at that point had lost all hope. They didn't get it. They still didn't get it. They had spent all this time with Jesus, by his side, seeing miracle after miracle, all this stuff taking place, and had still lost hope. They had still given up. They had turned back to go fishing. That was their career before. They had went fishing. He said, throw out the net on the right side of the boat and you'll catch some. So they did, and they caught, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish. Then the disciple Jesus loved, which is John. John is writing this, and he thinks a lot of himself, apparently. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic. He had stripped for work. See, that's no shame. This guy has no shame. He's out fishing with his buddies. It's hot. Decides he's going to take all the clothes off and be like. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this guy just. If you go fishing with me and you start doing that, we're not going to be friends very long. He jumped into the water and headed to the shore. The others stayed in the boat and pulled the loaded net to the shore. I'm going to skip down from there. From there, they make breakfast and everything. And after breakfast, Jesus asked Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me? Oh, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," Peter replied. "You know I love you." And Jesus said, "Then feed my lambs." And Jesus repeated the question, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said, "you know I love you." "Then take care of my sheep," Jesus said. A third time, he asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt. Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep." I feel like at that point, Peter still had that rooster crow in his head. Peter still had that moment of failure in his life, in his mind. He was still, like, I don't know if shame is the right word, but he was still, like, holding some shame there. He was still holding that bitter moment of failure where he had denied Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed. Jesus says, I tell you the truth, when you were young, you were able to do as you liked. You dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go. Jesus said this to let him know by what kind of death he would glorify God. Then Jesus told him, follow me. Peter turned around and saw behind them the disciple Jesus loved. See, John keeps calling himself this. I wonder if John and Peter didn't have a little bit of rivalry going. You ever? I just feel like that, you know? I feel like they kind of had some rivalry. So, because like John, in his book, he calls himself the one that Jesus loved. You know, but, you know, I don't know, anyway. And, oh yeah, and also, John is the only one that tells us the guy's name, or that Peter... Do you remember Peter cuts the guy's ear off when the guards come to take Jesus, and Peter pulls out his sword and whacks the dude's ear off? John's the only one that actually describes that, like who the guard was and everything. I don't remember his name now, but John, like, because of course John, like, yeah, he tells you, like, it was Peter. Peter cut this dude's ear off. Like, he's more, like, I feel like he was trying to, I don't know. That doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter. Not today, anyway. Peter turned around and saw behind them the disciple Jesus loved, the one who had leaned over to Jesus during supper and asked, Lord, who will betray you? Peter asked Jesus, what about him, Lord? Jesus replied, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is it to you? As for you, follow me. See, and that's another thing. Jesus told Peter, follow me. And then Peter turned around. See, we're good at that. That's what you don't want to do. When Jesus says, follow me, you don't want to turn around right away. That's not a good move. But we do that. We're more concerned about others and we start looking around us. When God tells us to do something, follow me and do this, we're good at looking around, seeing what's around us. He's not telling everybody else, he's telling you. But here's the point I want to get to today. I want to back up just a little bit. When Jesus starts asking Peter these questions, or it's a question 3 times, and he gets to that 3rd time, and it hurts. It hurts. And I start wondering, I start trying to put myself, like, I start asking Peter, what's going on, man? What's going on here? Because Peter's like, you know I love you. You know I love you. You know I love you. But see, inside Peter still had that rooster crowing. He knew, he felt like his words weren't enough. He felt like what he was saying, you know I love you, but in the back of his mind was saying, yeah, but you still denied me. Yeah, but you still denied me. Yeah, but you still denied me. And I felt like it was hurting. It said it hurt Peter. Like, you ever you feel like when someone doesn't believe you, and you're telling them the truth, but for some reason you feel like they don't believe you because of something in the past that you may have done or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it hurts. And Jesus said, I tell you the truth, when you were young, you were able to do as you like. You dressed yourself and went wherever you want to go. See, this is big right here. When you were young, you went wherever you wanted to go. You remember that first time that Jesus said, follow me? They had been out in the water fishing. He told them to put their nets on the other side or go out deeper, and they caught more fish. And then they came up and he said, follow me. See, Peter went then because he was young. Not a young man, but young in spirit. He didn't know exactly where Jesus was going. And he went. He said, follow me. And Peter went. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go. I don't know why, but I never got this. Jesus was telling Peter, this whole thing is about submitting. See, Peter was really good at telling Jesus what he wanted. See, Peter wanted to follow Jesus, but he wanted to keep his own plans intact. Peter wanted to follow Jesus. Peter followed Jesus. Peter was right there the whole time, but Peter still had his own agenda, his own plans intact. Peter had not fully submitted to Jesus. Peter had not fully submitted to the will and the plan of God. At this point, Peter was still fighting the old Peter and the new Peter. The old Simon and the new Peter. Peter was still fighting that old self. Shifty. Peter was still holding on to some past. But see what Jesus was showing Peter was that the road to the kingdom led through the cross. And he was asking Peter, you really want to follow me? Are you really love me? Because this road I travel, it's not easy. And when you get older, you're going to stretch out your arms and you're going to go where you don't want to go. Remember, Peter was the guy, you can't go to Jerusalem, Jesus, they'll kill you. No, Peter told Jesus, no, you can't wash my feet. Peter wasn't going to let the guards take Jesus. Because, see, Peter was sleeping in the garden every time Jesus wanted them to go pray. Peter he couldn't stay awake for an hour to pray with Jesus. The whole time Jesus was seeking the will of God. And he was trying to show Peter, if you'll come with me and seek. See, this whole time, Jesus, throughout Peter's life, he's trying to teach Peter to submit to God's will fully, not just a little bit, not just kind of follow Jesus, not just kind of submit to God's will, but to completely submit. Complete submission. That's what Jesus is talking about here. That's what Jesus is trying to teach Peter. This whole time from day one of hanging out with Peter, he's trying to get through his thick head that if you'll just listen to me and do what I'm telling you to do, you'll achieve great things. But here's the thing, it's not about achievement. Here's why. Everybody thinks about, like, when you become a Christian and you submit to God, that wealth is just going to just overwhelm you. You're just going to get piled up with wealth and all this, and you're going to have, like, blessings and blessings and blessings. I want to remind you something. When they caught all the fish, that's wealth. Okay? But as soon as Jesus gave them that wealth, he asked them what? To walk away from it. He gave them the wealth and then said, follow me. If it's wealth you're chasing, you'll never see it. You'll miss it. You'll miss it every time. On the mountain, when Peter went up with Jesus on the mountain, Peter wanted to build a shelter because he wanted stability. He wanted security. But Jesus said, no, we got to go back down. There's people that need us. So Peter had to leave his stability, his security. He had it in him. He had the ability. He had it. But that wasn't it either. And when the guards came to get Jesus, and Peter cut the dude's ear off with a sword, Peter was ready to fight for Jesus. Peter was ready to go. You're not taking my Jesus. Peter showed strength. He showed courage. See, we say that's all the things that we need. That's all the things that Christianity is, but it's not. The most important lesson that Jesus was trying to teach Peter was submission. It was to submit. It's not about the wealth. It's not about stability. It's not about security. It's not about any of those things. Yeah, they're great. They'll come along, but that's not what it's about. Jesus was telling Peter, do you really want to follow me? Do you ever wonder, like, some of the most successful people, they're the most sophisticated, they're the biggest jerks, you know what I mean? Like, have you ever seen that? Like, there's people, like, sometimes I feel like the most complicated people have the ability to achieve the most. Like, we may not relate to them, but that doesn't mean that they can't achieve something great. See, Peter goes on and preaches, and like 3,000 people are saved later on. Peter was responsible for leading one of the biggest, I don't know what you call it. What do you call it, Howard? Biggest Christian or movement. It wasn't Christian, they didn't call it Christian then, but biggest movement of the Spirit, the biggest movement of Christ. Over 3,000 people were saved. That's huge. See, Peter the whole time, he was trying to follow Jesus and keep his own plans together. If we're going to keep following, we're going to say we're going to follow Jesus, but keep our own plans together, we're just following Jesus, kinda. We can follow Jesus, kinda. Look, you're going to fail. You're going to screw it up at some point. You're going to mess up. You're not going to be perfect. That's where the grace comes in. That's why Jesus died, is to give you that grace and forgiveness. He's not worried about where you mess up. He's saying, are you really willing to submit to me? Because there's a cost. There's a cost. And he told Peter his cost was he was going to have to stretch out his arms. Peter was one of the only other disciples that was crucified. Peter literally had the exact example of life right in front of him. He lived right next to it every day. And he still struggled. He still struggled. I mean, he had Jesus like right next to him. Like, come here, Wes. Like, me and Jesus, Peter and Jesus just hung out. They just hung out. Yeah. Like, because we say it would be easier. We struggle now. We think it's hard now because Jesus isn't here. Peter still struggled. But Jesus didn't give up on him. I'm not going to give up on you. Not today, anyway. But do you see it? Jesus isn't going to give up on you. It's okay to fail. You don't have to hold on to the guilt and the shame. It's about, are you really willing to submit? Even after you fail, you still got to get up. You still got to move. You still got to keep pushing. You still got to keep going. Even when it hurts. Even when it doesn't feel good. Jesus is calling you into something. And it comes down to, are you really willing to submit? You may have to give up some stuff. It may come with the cost. It may come with the cost. It may cost you your family. I don't know. It may cost you the fortune and the things that you like to hold on to. Jesus never said the road that you're coming with me on is going to be easy. Jesus told Peter right then, if you're going to follow me, this is what's going to go. This is how it's going to go. The kingdom of heaven is going to lead through this cross. Peter had to decide right then. He had to figure it out. Did he really want to submit? Or did he just want to keep following? Kinda. And there's something else that I feel like when Jesus was being led to the courtyard, it says Peter followed at a distance. And I feel like that describes us a lot of times. We want to follow Jesus, but we want to keep our distance. We don't want to get that close. We don't want to get that all in. Because we want to hold on to our own plans, our own security, our own stability, our own things. And here's the biggest point. Don't miss this. Write this down. Jesus will meet you on your turf. Jesus will meet you right where you're at. But he won't meet you on your terms. He'll meet you at the bar. He'll meet you in the middle of that porn whatever that you're watching. He'll meet you in the middle of whatever it is that you're dealing with, whatever it is you're struggling with, whatever it is you're saying no to Jesus. He will meet you where you're at, but he won't meet you on your terms. It's about submitting to his terms. Submitting to his way. See, when I look back and I look at Peter's life, it describes my life way too close. Way too close. Because I've been guilty at following at a distance. I've been guilty at wanting to follow with my own plan still in my hand. I've been guilty at having the perfect example, but still not following it. But Jesus isn't going to give up on you. He's not giving up on you. But he's asking, are you really all in? Are you really willing to submit? Because you'll do even greater things. It's not about how many fish you got. It's not about how many Facebook followers you got. It's not about how many cars you got, how many guitars you got. It doesn't matter how many guitars I've got. I still can't play them. It's not about the things. It's not about the stability. It's not about your strength. It's not about how strong you are. It's about how willing you are to submit. That hit me hard this week. How willing am I to submit? How willing am I, really? So that's what Jesus is asking. He's saying, follow me. Follow me. Jesus laid out the perfect example of what love really looks like. But love comes with the cost, and sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it hurts. And sometimes we fail, but that doesn't mean Jesus is giving up. He's saying, come on anyway. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to decide or to ask yourself, am I really all in? Am I really all in? Because see, Peter was good at the words and saying, but he hadn't really fully, inside in his heart, he hadn't really fully given in. He hadn't really fully submitted. This whole story is about submitting. I keep saying that over and over. If you really want to follow, you really want to see God work in your life, it's time to let go of some of the other things. Not some of them, all of them. It's time to let go and let God take control. Let God take over. And see, that's another thing. When you let God take over, there's things that can happen that you can't explain otherwise. Or you can go against the grain and fight against Him. And you can spend more time cleaning up the mess and chasing the mess, or you can submit and do it His way. So I'm going to give you a minute. Just pray where you're at. Ask God to speak to you. Ask God to show you. We all have those things. We all have those times. We all have those situations and circumstances in our lives where we deny. But let's ask God, where am I not submitting? Where am I not surrendering myself? Where am I not surrendering my heart? And if you need someone to pray with you or pray over you, we've got Howard's here. He can come down here, and Jason and Sam are here. We can pray. We can pray with you. Stephen and Julie are in here. Isn't that you? Yeah. They can pray with you as well. So just take a minute and get alone with God for just a second.